Batman, The Joker's Wild. Gotham City, New Jersey, summer of 2012. It was a typical hot summer in Gotham City, New Jersey. And as the sun set and night was coming, for an old man by the name of Salvatore Valestra, aka the Weezer, he was a very old crime boss who, like many crime bosses, was powerful once in Gotham City, but now, like many other crime bosses, his criminal empire is shrinking due to the fact that the police department has cleaned itself up over the years and the mysterious vigilante known as Batman. But for Salvatore Valestra, his end was not going to come from his lung cancer or old age. It was going to come from an unexpected fiend. As he was sitting at his desk with an oxygen nose around his face, writing some things in a ledger, he hears the elevator pull up. Figuring it was one of his girlfriends coming, he says, "Is that you, Sugar Pubs?" as he screamed out the question in his penthouse/office. But it wasn't his girlfriend. He noticed the figure coming out of the elevator was wearing a purple trench coat, a purple hat. It was dark in his penthouse/office. He only could see the chalk white face glowing in the dark almost. And he recognized who that face was as the face revealed itself into the light with its giant ghastly grin. It was none other than the Joker. And Valestra was fearful and screamed, You! What are you doing here? What do you want?" He screams at the Joker. The Joker says to Valestra,
"Sorry to frighten you, but Valestra, I heard that you're a tired old man with a lot of businesses and property, ones that I can use, so I'm going to muscle into your business and take over operations. Don't worry, Weezer, you're gonna have a nice retirement package."
Then the Joker pulls out a gun, points it at Weezer, and lets out a maniacal laughter. The Joker stopped shooting. Salvatore, the Weezer Valestra, was dead. And the Joker pushes him off his office chair, sits down, and looks at what he was writing on the ledger. It was really nothing important to him. Then the Joker gets up, goes over to a giant painting of Valestra in his younger days. He opens the painting and sees a safe behind the painting. The Joker pulls out a stethoscope and cracks the safe. As he opens the safe, it revealed all the important paperwork the Joker needed, and he began forging signatures and changing everything around to make it look like Valestra left everything to him. A couple days later, at Valestra's penthouse/office, the Joker was conducting a meeting as everybody was sitting in a long meeting table. The Joker was sitting at the head of the table explaining what was going on to all of Valestra's underlings. These men included Chucky Saul, Buzz Bronski, and Carl Beaumont, and several other men that were there at the table. And the Joker was saying,
"And that is it, gentlemen. That was Valestra's dying wish, that I get everything and take over the operations. He even signed all the paperwork, leaving it all to me."
But the men were not buying it. Chucky Saul says, "I want to hear it from Valestra myself." Carl Beaumont says, "Yeah, I agree with him. I want to hear it from Valestra myself too." And then he asks, "And why you, Joker? Out of all the people, why you?" The Joker says to the men,
"Well, gentlemen, that's easy, because old Weezer saw a winner in me, and he knew if I was going to take the Empire to greater heights, it was going to be through me."
Then Carl Beaumont asks the Joker, "So what happens if we won out?" Then the Joker says to Carl,
"Nothing at all. We just shake hands and call it even."
Then Joker outstretches his hands to Carl Beaumont and a gesture of shaking hands. Then Carl Beaumont takes the Joker's hands, about to shake it, when all of a sudden, Carl Beaumont was electrocuted. The Joker laughs maniacally and then says,
Looks like old Carl blew a fuse.
Then the door to the penthouse flies open, and Joker's men come running into the penthouse armed with machine guns, pointing it to the rest of Valestra's lieutenants, and Chucky Saul says, "You're crazy, you know that?" Then the Joker responds to Saul's comments.
What's wrong, Chucky? You never heard of the healing power of laughter? Now get out of here!
Screams the Jokers to his new lieutenants, and they all get up and leave as the former lieutenants of Valestra clear out the room. Then his right-hand man, Bob, comes up and he says, "You want me to tell them, sir?" Joker says,
Yes, and see where they're up to.
Then Bob puts on his sunglasses, turns around, and walks out. Joker walks over to the dead body of Carl Beaumont that had fallen back on the chair after Joker electrocuted him with his killer joy buzzer, and he starts talking to the dead body of Beaumont, saying,
You know, Carl, your friends are not that bad. Maybe they need time to think it over.
Then Joker kneels down by the dead body of Beaumont and puts his ear close to his mouth, as implying that he's hearing something from Beaumont's lifeless body, and says,
What's that? Kill them all? You're one vicious bastard, Carl, and I'm glad you're dead. I'm glad you're dead. I just killed myself.
Some days later, at one of the many boardwalks that litter Gotham City's harbor line, Bruce Wayne and his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Vicky Vale, were just having fun on a date, as Vicky Vale was carrying a giant stuffed animal that either she won or Bruce won for her, and Bruce Wayne had a balloon and a giant cotton candy. They were laughing, they were happy. It was a nice summer day. The sky was blue, there was nice white clouds, and it was just a sunny, happy day. Then Vicky says to Bruce Wayne, "Hey Bruce, let's go on the Ferris wheel." Bruce says, "Okay, we'll do that." Then Bruce and Vicky walk up to the Ferris wheel. Bruce pays the $10 admission to the Ferris wheel, and him and Vicky get on the blue-colored Ferris wheel cart, and they ride up. Vicky says to Bruce, "You sure know how to treat a girl." Then Bruce says, "Hey, anything for you, Vicky," and he kisses her. Then Vicky looks down as they were gaining altitude, and she sees a familiar figure by one of the balloon carts being manned by a man in a clown costume. She says to Bruce, "Bruce, look, isn't that Buzz Bronski?" Bruce squints his eyes to get a better view, and he says to her, "It is Buzz Bronski." Sure enough, Buzz Bronski was there at the boardwalk. He was there with his two young sons, just doing normal dad duties, taking his sons out for a good time. And his sons wanted a balloon. So he goes up to the balloon cart, and he asks the guy in the clown costume manning the cart, and he says, "2 balloons, 1 red, 1 blue." The clown says, "You got it, sir. 2 balloons, a red and a blue, coming right up." The clown proceeds to inflate the balloons for the boys and gives it to them. And Bronski pays him. And then the clown says, "Well, sir, you know, we have buy 2, get 1 free, so you're entitled to a free balloon, sir." Bronski's 2 sons says, "Come on, Dad, get a balloon. It's free." Buzz says, "Okay, do you have a green one, sir?" The clown says to Bronski back, "Yes, I sure do." So he proceeds to grab a green balloon, and when he was going to inflate it at the helium tank, suddenly the helium tank was empty, and he says to Bronski, "No problem, sir. I got another tank right here." And then the clown reaches down to another tank, but this was not a helium tank. It was a tank for a flamethrower. and he covertly takes a lighter, lights the flamethrower, then he pulls out the flamethrower and fries Bronsky. Bronsky lets out a blood-curdling scream as he was running on fire. He instinctively ran right to the water, diving off the boardwalk into the waters below. Then the clown began laughing maniacally. Then the clown pulled off his costume, wig, and a latex mask to reveal it was the Joker in disguise, and he says aloud,
I always knew you were full of hot air, Bronsky. And now, for my next trick, I'm going to disappear.
Then the Joker proceeded to press a button on the balloon cart, and suddenly colored gas began spewing out, creating a giant cloud. Everybody began freaking out, screaming and running. The Ferris wheel that Bruce and Vicky were on stopped at the very top, and Bruce and Vicky watched in horror as Joker released a colored gas of some sort. They didn't know what it was, but luckily for them, they were safe where they were at. Not too long later, the police were there, and the only fatality was that of Buzz Bronsky. That gas was just harmless colored smoke to disguise the Joker's escape. They also pulled out of the water Bronsky's charred corpse. And of course, Vicky Vale, being a photojournalist, pulls out her smartphone and takes pictures of the whole thing. And she says to Bruce, I can't believe it, Bruce. On my date with you, look what happened. The Joker strikes. I wonder when he got back to Gotham. Bruce says to Vicky, I wonder too. Later at Wayne Manor, in the Batcave, Bruce Wayne was looking at the surveillance videos of the boardwalk and was looking at the whole thing as it unfolded on video. And Alfred walks up to Bruce and says, well, Master Bruce, here's your dinner, sir. Fried chicken and pinto beans. Bruce says, thank you, to Alfred. And Alfred looks at the display monitor on the back computer and says, oh my, the Joker's back in town? Bruce says, yes, unfortunately, that bastard is back in town and I don't know what he's up to, but he just killed the number 3 guy and Sal the Weezer's Valestra's organization, Buzz Bronsky, and I'm willing to bet he was responsible for the deaths of Carl Beaumont, even though it was ruled out as electrocution. And also, Sal Valestra has disappeared, which I'm willing to bet that Joker had something to do with it, said Bruce. Alfred agreed with him, and then Alfred asked Bruce, so why, Master Bruce, is he killing all these mafia guys? Bruce then says to Alfred, it's simple, he's trying to muscle into an operation, and who better than Sal the Weezer Valestra, a man who was dying, and plus the deaths of Beaumont and Bronsky reveal that they probably didn't agree with the Joker's demands or deals, so they try to butt out and try to go their own way, and Joker was not going to have that. And if my hunch is correct, I'm willing to bet he's going to kill the number 2 guy of Valestra's organization, Chucky Saul. 3 days later, at the steps of the Gotham City Hall of Records, there was a podium set up for a press conference. Chucky Saul had called for a press conference, and all the news media was there, including Jack Ryder, armed with his trusty digital recorder. He was talking to the other reporters there from the different TV stations and other news outlets, saying, I wonder what's going on, this has got to be good. Sure enough, the front doors to the Hall of Records opens up, and Chucky Saul walks out with an entourage of bodyguards as he walks up to the microphone podium, and the cameras start rolling, and every reporter, including Ryder, started rolling their microphones, digital recorders, and cameras. Vicky Vale was there with her digital camera taking photos of the event. And so was Bruce Wayne. He couldn't be in his Batman costume due to the fact it was broad daylight. Batman only operates at night, unfortunately. But he was there to see what was going to go on. Well, as everybody was there waiting, the door to the Hall of Records opens up, and Chucky Soul emerges with his entourage of bodyguards there as he walks down to the podium of microphones. Then you start to hear the sound of cameras going off, reporters trying to ask questions, and you see the cameramen rolling their cameras. Then Saul says, "Before I take any questions, I'm going to just state why I called this press conference for. I have reason to believe that my dear friend Salvatore Valestra has died. He has been very ill for the last couple of weeks and unfortunately could not complete his will and testament. But he did state before he died that I was to get everything, all his businesses and all his interests." Then someone in the crowd of reporters shouts out, "You mean his criminal empire?" Then Saul says, "No, he was not a criminal. He was not a mob boss. He was a hard-working American man who built a big business empire in this city." Then Jack Ryder says to Chucky Saul, "Wow, you must have been very close to him." Chucky Saul says, "Yes, I was very close. I worked for Valestra since I was a teenager. He paid for my college and everything, and I repaid him by working for him for the rest of my life, and is now paid off." As the press conference was going on, it was drawing a small crowd of onlookers who were passing by and stopped to look at the press conference. And also, throughout the area of the press conference, there were a good concentration of mimes. Of course, Gotham City was no stranger to mimes and other street performers like any major city, but there were sure a lot of mimes in the area just walking around and doing their little mimes thing, coming very closer to the press conference. Of course, this did not go unnoticed to Bruce Wayne, who was keeping a close eye. He knew Joker was going to strike, but how was Joker going to strike? There were police there was Saul's bodyguards. Bruce knew he was going to be a very hard target to strike at. Well, as the mimes were getting closer, another mime was coming up with an old-fashioned street sweeper cart. And as they were getting closer and closer to the press conference, suddenly there was another mime there. And the mime turned around, and Bruce recognized him right away. It was the Joker. He was not wearing his traditional purple. He was wearing a top hat and a black and white, funny-looking suit. And he was saying to the crowd,
Indeed he did. I saw it with my own two eyes. He reached out with his dead hands, and with this very pen I have in my hand, signed it.
Then the Joker turns around to the shocked Chucky Saul and points to pen, and he says to Saul,
Hello, Vinny. It's your Uncle Bingo. It's time to cash in the check.
Then Joker presses a button on the pen, and the lower half of the old-fashioned fountain pen launches like a little missile right into Saul's throat, hitting him directly in the jugular as Saul was trying to pull in vain the pen that was lodged in his throat. He falls down dead. Then the Joker turns around to face the horrified audience, pulling off his top hat, shouting to the audience,
Ladies and gentlemen, the pen is truly mightier than the sword.
As the Joker said that, the mimes had all gathered behind the audience of onlookers and the reporters and reached into the one mime's old-fashioned street sweeper cart and pulled out machine guns and began firing into the crowd and at the steps of the Hall of Records. During the carnage, Bruce Wayne dove for cover behind a parked car, and unfortunately there were a lot of people that got killed. Several policemen, several of Saul's bodyguards, and several innocent civilians who had gathered just to watch the press conference, and a couple of reporters. Jack Ryder was safe as he dove for cover and survived. Vicky Vale got on her knees and crawled like a toddler all the way to the car that Bruce Wayne was taking shelter behind. The firing stopped, and several getaway vehicles and a limo pull up, and Joker gets in the limo with a couple of his mimes, and several other mimes got into the other getaway vehicles, and Bruce Wayne gets up and runs over to the limo that was speeding off. As Joker saw Bruce Wayne coming, he was waving bye to him as the limo sped off and all the other cars sped off. Vicky runs to Bruce and she screams to Bruce, "Bruce, hold me! I'm scared." Bruce quickly embraces Vicky and says to her, "It's okay, Vicky, it's okay. They're gone." Bruce looks at the carnage. There were a lot of people on the ground bleeding, some dead, some that are probably going to die. Bruce looks around to see if there are any more stragglers, and he saw a very familiar figure, Joker's right-hand man, Bob, who was running to another car and getting in. He noticed that Bob had a huge camera around his neck, and Bob gets into his car and speeds off the opposite direction. Bruce Wayne couldn't do nothing. One, he was not in his Batman suit, and two, he had to console Vicky, who was horrified at what happened. Even though she was a photojournalist and been through war zones and everything, it was still traumatizing to her. Later, Bruce Wayne comes home and Alfred says, "Oh my, Master Bruce, I saw the TV. I'm glad you made it home safely, sir." Bruce says to Alfred, "I was right, Alfred. I was right. He went after Chucky Saw and got him. Dang it! If only Batman could go out in the daylight," said Bruce Wayne angrily. Then his cell phone goes off. Bruce grabs his phone and sees the caller ID. It was Tim Drake. He answers the phone. "Yeah, Tim." Tim on the other end says, "Geez Louise, Bruce, I saw what happened on the news. Are you okay?" Bruce says to Tim, "Yeah, Tim, I'm okay. How's your dad doing?" Tim says, "My dad's doing fine." And then Bruce asks him, "How's that rehab clinic in Arizona going for him?" Tim says, "Yeah, it's going fine. The dry air was good for his health, and the rehab clinic is great, but do you need me to come back?" asks Tim. Bruce says, "No, I'm fine. You stay there. Your dad needs you more." Tim's like, "Come on, Bruce." And then Bruce says, "No, Tim, no. Stay there with your dad. Remember, I've been doing this for 13 years, and I've handled the Joker by myself many a times." Anyways, he says, "Tell your dad hello, and I'll be fine," Bruce says to Tim. And then Tim says, "Fine, but remember, if you need me, pal, I'm just a phone call away." Bruce says, "Don't worry, Tim. I know your number." And then he hangs up. Then Bruce looks at Alfred and says, "Alfred, if you need me, I'm going to be downstairs in the Batcave doing some research." Alfred said, "Yes, sir." Later that night, at the Axis Chemical Factory, a chemical factory that was owned by Sal Valestra, now was under Joker's ownership. And Joker made it into his new hideout, as he had draped a office room in purple drapes and was just cutting out photos from magazines and other things. Then Bob walks into the room with a file folder and he gives it to Joker. Joker opens it up and says to Bob,
"Bob, I must admit, you are a good photographer. You know how to take good pictures."
The file folder contained photographs that Bob took during the press conference, and he looked through them, and he sees a picture of Jack Ryder, and he asks Bob,
"Who was this lost? Look at him. No personality. Look at that tie."
Bob says to the Joker, "That's Jack Ryder, sir. He's the reporter and occasional news anchorman for Channel 6 News." Then Joker says,
"Oh, that's why he seems familiar."
Then the Joker shuffled through more pictures. Then he saw a picture of Vicky Vale, and he says,
"Jesus, mama, who is that woman? A woman like that walking around would put steam in a man's rhubarb."
Then Bob answers the Joker's question. "That's Vicky Vale. She's a photojournalist, and she's seeing a guy named Bruce Wayne, the Bruce Wayne." And then Bob reaches for the back of the photo pile and pulls out the picture of Bruce and Vicky embraced together from that scene. And then Joker looks and says,
"Well, Bob, I think she's gonna trade up. Find out where she lives. I want this woman."
Bob says, "You got it, Joker," and walks off. Then later on at the assembly line down below at the chemical plant, the Joker walks up in the catwalk and screams to the plant supervisor below, asking him,
"Did you ship 1,000,000 of those things yet?"
The plant supervisor responded back shouting, "Yes, sir." Then the Joker shouts again,
Ship a million more. We're taking this out a whole new door.
Several days later, Vicky Vale was at a studio doing a side job of photographing two models for a swimsuit calendar. She was no stranger to photographing models. It comes with the territory. She was photographing two well-known models, Amanda Keeler and Candy Walker. She was telling the girls, "Okay, girls, give me a smile," and then she snaps a photo. And then she says, "Alright, ladies, turn to the other side. I'm going to snap another one and smile." And then she snaps another photo. Then she noticed that Amanda Keeler started giggling, and she says, "Amanda, quit giggling. I'm trying to get a photo here." And then Candy also started to giggle. Then Vicky notices as Candy and Amanda begin erupting in maniacal laughter. They were laughing uncontrollably, and Vicky noticed that their skin was turning pale. Suddenly, both women fall down dead. And then Vicky runs over to them along with everybody else in the studio, and they saw the telltale sign of the Joker, dead, with giant grins on their faces. Vicky says, "Oh my god." Later on, the afternoon was starting to turn to night. It was 6 o'clock, and a lot of people were sitting down to watch the local news. There were two typical news anchor people, a man and a woman. The man introduced himself. "Good evening, Gotham City. This is Jonathan Franks." Then the woman introduced herself, and "This is Deborah Feldman with your evening news." Then the news anchor lady keeps on announcing the news. The fashion world was stunned today by the sudden death of well-known models Candy Walker and Amanda Keeler. They died today during a fashion shoot, apparently caused by an allergic reaction to something, but the police are not ruling out foul play. Then the anchor guy, Jonathan, says, "And today the stock market closed at a high," and then he sees his display screen. He's like, "Wait a minute, this just in. Two more deaths reported at a beauty salon in Gotham City, matching the same description as the death of the two fashion models." Then Deborah, the anchor lady, began to giggle. Jonathan's like, "Deborah, this is no laughing matter." Then Deborah began laughing maniacally. She started laughing out of control and then fell back from her chair. Everybody in the newsroom ran around to congregate over Deborah. The controller at the control desk quickly calls for a paramedic. Suddenly, another controller at the control desk noticed that somebody was starting to jam into the television transmission frequency. Suddenly, an image of the Joker appeared on the display screens, showing him pushing a shopping cart in a grocery store, hopping and jumping, all happy, and he says,
New and improved Joker products with a brand new secret ingredient, Smilex.
During the warped commercial, he goes over to a man that was tied up, and by the tied up man, there was a table filled with a lot of hygiene products, and he says,
Oh no, this man's been using Brand X.
Then in the commercial, the Joker grabs a can of spray deodorant from the table, shakes it, pops the top, and sprays the tied up man in the face. The man began to giggle and laugh maniacally until he fell down dead with a big grin on his face. And then the Joker says,
With Joker brand products, I get a smile again and again.
Then the commercial goes on to Joker sitting at a mock-up beach in a beach chair with cardboard cutouts of the two late models, Amanda Keeler and Candy Walker, their faces, the face with the giant Joker grin painted on it. Throughout the commercial, they were saying, "Love that Joker." And then the Joker says in the final part of the commercial,
For ruby red lips and chalk white skin and hair coloring so natural that only your Undertaker would notice. Buy Joker products. And how do you get one of these lovely products? Chances are you own them already.
Meanwhile, Bruce Wayne was at his house looking at the commercial in shock, and Alfred comes running in. He says, "Oh my, Master Bruce, I saw the TV in my room. Oh my God, do we have any of those contaminated products?" Bruce Wayne says, "I don't know, Alfred. I really don't know, and I'm a little horrified right now." But he says to Alfred, "Alfred, let's go shopping." Several days had passed, and the death toll keeps on climbing. It had reached the thousands across the United States, as every police in every city and every state were struggling to crack the Joker's chemical code. Meanwhile, in Gotham City, in the busied office of the police department, Commissioner Gordon was on the phone, and the mayor of Gotham was in Gordon's office, pacing back and forth, screaming at Gordon, saying, "Damn it, Gordon, I want you to find out what this madman's poisoning us with, and I mean quickly." Then the commissioner puts his hands over the receivers like, "Hey, I am trying, Your Honor." And then he gets back on the phone and he says, "Listen, I really need your help." Meanwhile, in the Batcave, Bruce Wayne was hard at work cracking the Joker's chemical code with his specialized equipment. As he was working and punching data into the computer, Alfred was there saying, "Oh, Master Bruce, are you close to cracking the code?" Bruce Wayne says, "Yes, I'm very close. I think I've got it figured out." As the butler had looked onto the table, he saw Bruce's smartphone light up. He grabs it and looks at it. It was a text message from Vicky Vale, and he says to Bruce, "Master Bruce, it's a text message from Vicky Vale. She says she's going to be a little late to the date that you all have tonight at the Flugelheim Art Museum." Bruce says, "Okay, Alfred." Then Bruce stops and is like, "Wait a minute. We don't have a date tonight." The two men looked at each other. Meanwhile, at the Flugelheim Museum in Gotham City, it was a very nice art museum that also served as a five-star restaurant. Of course, Vicky Vale dresses nicely and she arrives at the museum ahead of Bruce Wayne, or she thought it was Bruce Wayne. Well, the maitre d' shows her to the table and she sits and waits and waits and waits. It was a while. Suddenly, the maitre d' comes back with a little gift wrap box, and he says to Vicky, "Miss Vale, this arrived for you." Vicky's like, "Oh, thank you." So she looks at the gift wrap box, she opens it up, and inside was a little cute gas mask in orange and green, and a card written in crayon that looked like it was written in a child's handwriting that says, "Urgent, put this on." So Vicky looks around and she hears the hissing of gas. She sees coming out from the air vents giant clouds of some sort of blue gas that was enveloping the art museum. Everybody who was breathing it in were falling over dead. As she looked in terror, as people were falling dead into their foods and waiters were falling down, dropping all their dishes and everything, she quickly screams and puts on the gas mask as she looks in horror as everyone was falling over dead. As quickly as it came in, the gas cleared, and soon she sees at the front door the Joker comes in with his men. One of his men had a large boombox, and the Joker screams out,
"Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Prince?"
The man holding the boombox begins playing a very old Prince song called Party Man, as the Joker and his men were going around vandalizing the works of art in the Flugelheim Museum. They slowly made their way up to where Vicky Vale was sitting at. Then one of the men pulls the chair out for the Joker to sit down. The Joker pulls out a lighter and lights the candle. The lighter acted like a flamethrower, and he says to Vicky Vale,
"Ah, Vicky Vale, I've never seen a beautiful woman like you in a long time. Let me introduce myself. They call me the Joker."
Vicky says nervously but with a bit of anger in her voice, "What do you want?" And the Joker replies back to her,
"What do I want? I want my face on the $1 bill. But I also want a girlfriend. It's been a long time since I've been in the dating scene, and I've been very busy lately, if you've been following my work over the years."
Then Vicky says, "Oh, I've known your work over the years. It seems like lately your latest caper has killed more people than you had in your 12 years of being a criminal." The Joker lets out a big smile and agrees with Vicky, and he says,
Oh, Vicky, 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 you're such a beautiful woman, and you got another thing I like in women. You got fire, and lots of it. But I can control that fire.
Then the Joker gets up and goes towards Vicky. Vicky quickly gets up and moves back as fast as she can, as the Joker says to her,
Oh, Vickyville, there's nothing to be afraid of. I'm a cool guy once you get to know me. I do a lot of fun things, and a lot of women will love to date me.
and then the Joker says,
Here, Vicky, why don't you get a nice whiff of my posy?
and then he squeezes the flower in his lapel and it squirts out acid. Vicky quickly moves out the way as the acid hits the metal pillar behind her, making the hissing noise that acid makes when it makes surface contact. Then Vicky quickly runs and grabs a pitcher of water from one table and splashes Joker's face with the water. Joker holds his face and starts screaming that he was melting. Vicky was freaking out. When she went closer to see if he was actually melting, he takes his hands out of his face and says to Vicky,
Boo!
Suddenly, the moment was interrupted with the sound of breaking glass coming from the skylight. It was none other than Batman coming to save the day as he was gliding down. As soon as he landed, he quickly kicked one of the Joker's men over the railing to it could have been his death, and then punched another of the Joker's men, knocking him out cold. Then he pulls out his zip launcher and points it at the Joker. The Joker had no idea what it was. He thought it was some sort of weapon. The zip launcher splits open and launches the cable, and then Batman quickly grabs Vicky Vale, holds her tight to his side, and says to Vicky,
Hang on.
They land on the ground, and Batman kicks the front door of the museum open. He runs out with Vicky, throws a smoke pellet behind him, and the Joker says to his men,
Bring me those wonderful toys!
Outside in the art museum, as Batman and Vicky were running down the steps, Batman screams at Vicky.
Get in the car.
Vicky screams the question, Which one is it? Then she trails off in her question as she sees the most obvious car that was right in front of them. It looked like a heavily modified Le Mans type of racer as the doors opened up by itself. Then Vicky quickly gets into the passenger end of the Batmobile. As soon as they get inside, the door shuts, Batman starts the engine, they speed out of the parking lot. Soon the Joker's men were pursuing in brand new Dodge Avengers painted green and purple. They were shooting at the Batmobile. Since traffic was heavy, the Batmobile was forced to slow down to weave in and out of the cars. Of course, Vicky screams when a bullet hits the passenger side window, but luckily for her that the Batmobile's windows were spindle ceramic. As the chase wore on, Batman hits a button labeled Performance Track and then puts the Batmobile into a turning drift, allowing him to make a sharp turn very quick. Two of the Joker's vehicles try to do the same thing but end up colliding against a giant truck and several cars, causing a massive accident. And as the Batmobile chase wore on, they finally reached a dead end, road construction. Suddenly, Batman hits the brakes, he opens the doors, and he says to Vicky,
Come on, we have to go on foot from here.
As Vicky and Batman ran down a side street, Batman pulls out a cylindrical device and speaks the command for the Batmobile to lock the doors, and the Batmobile's doors shut, lock, and a security system notification sounds. Soon, Batman and Vicky reach a dead end, and Vicky lets out a scream as one of the Joker's Dodge Avengers comes speeding towards them. Batman quickly grabs Vicky, pulls out his grapple gun, and grapples them both to safety. After making sure Vicky was safe, Batman dives back down to the streets below and takes on the Joker's men. He takes them all out. The final guy was Bob the Goon, Joker's right-hand guy. He had a big knife, and Batman signaled him to come at him, but Bob just dropped the knife and fled. Then Batman grabs his cylindrical device that he used to tell the Batmobile to lock up and tells the Batmobile to come. The Batmobile starts up and drives itself to the location, and then Batman says to the Batmobile to stop as Vicky had climbed back down, and she freaked out as the Batmobile came to a screeching halt, almost hitting Batman. Afterwards, Batman was driving Vicky somewhere down through dark wooded roads, but to where? Batman was like a statue driving. He didn't make a noise or nothing, he just looked straight ahead. Vicky had looked at him and tried to see if she could recognize the lips and the jawline. Who could be Batman, she wondered. Suddenly, Batman presses a button on the center dashboard, and two little speakers come out from the headrest of the passenger seat and begin making a weird droning noise that began to disorient Vicky. Suddenly, Vicky looks, and the roadway was gone. They were inside a cave. As the Batmobile was slowing down, the Batmobile came to a stop, and the doors opened. Vicky stepped out. She looked around. She could hear the noise of bats flying all over the place. She saw lights. She saw some computers and equipment. She figured this was Batman's hideout. Batman instructed her to follow him, and they came down to a giant computer that had a lot of display screens, and Batman pushes a button on the keyboard, and suddenly she sees text displaying on one screen. And the other screen began showing computer graphics of some sort of molecule, and the other screen showed all the products he analyzed, and Batman says to Vicky,
The police have it all wrong. They're looking for one chemical. The Joker contaminated all the products at the source.
Then Vicky says to Batman, okay, if he contaminated hundreds of products at the source, we'll all be dead. Then the Batman goes on to explain to Vicky,
Wrong. Perfume alone won't do it, but perfume mixed with deodorant would trigger the reaction.
And then Batman gets up and hands Vicky a manila envelope containing all the data he had from the analysis of what combinations of products to avoid, and he says to her,
Give this to Jack Ryder at News 6 as fast as you can.
Then Batman quickly sprays Vicky with some gas to knock her out. The next day, the news broke out that the chemical code was cracked, and Jack Ryder was on the news giving out the instructions of which product combinations to avoid. And then he gives out the final death toll numbers from the Joker's contaminated products, saying that it was a whopping 20,000 people across the United States that died, with 754 being here in Gotham City. Meanwhile, in his hideout on Axis Chemicals, the Joker sees the news and destroys the television with a boxing glove that was loaded to a spring gun, and he says to Bob angrily,
God damn that Batman. Ugh, forget it. This town needs an enema.
And then the Joker blows a party favor. The next day, the mayor of Gotham City was given a press conference. The anniversary of the founding of Gotham City was supposed to be held in the summer this year, but because in light of the tragedies that happened with the Joker, and the Joker being loose and people fearful, the mayor announced that the Gotham founding celebration was being canceled until further notice. Then the transmission of the television signal had been jammed, and of course, the Joker appeared on everyone's TV in Gotham City. He didn't have his usual chalk white appearance. He was wearing makeup to make himself look normal, even had his hair colored to make himself look normal, and he gives an announcement on the TV saying,
Ladies and gentlemen of Gotham City, you all know me as the Joker. You think I'm a monster. You think I'm a murderer. But I'm not all those things. I'm just a guy who likes to have fun. And just to show that I'm sorry for what I did, I'm gonna put on the Founders Day celebration. At the stroke of midnight, I will release $20 million from the parade. Yes, that's right, folks. You heard me. $20 million in cash.
Of course, the announcement of $20 million in cold cash being dumped during the Joker's parade got everybody who was watching it all excited, guaranteed to draw a big crowd. Bruce Wayne was sitting in the Batcave watching it on the Bat computer. He turns off the image of the Joker on the one screen and he lays back thinking about the places that the Joker could be hiding out at. Suddenly, the Bat computer beeps and notifies him that it found the hideout of the Joker. Bruce Wayne looks at the display screen and it showed that recently Access Chemicals, that was owned by none other than Salvatore Valestra, fell under the ownership of a Jack White. Of course, Jack White is one of Joker's most well-known aliases. Bruce Wayne clicks on the Access Chemical Factory logo, and the other display screen, the back computer, shows him a map and a readout to the location of Access Chemicals. So Bruce Wayne suits up. Moments later, at Access Chemicals, at the front entrance, the guards at the entrance of the chemical factory were shocked and tried to shoot at an object that was coming at them quickly. It was the Batmobile, coming at high speed. But their shots were in vain. As they jumped out the way, the Batmobile goes right through the gate as if it wasn't there at high speed. As the Batmobile was going down the long driveway, machine guns pop out and fire. The machine gun was used to weaken the doorway into the chemical factory proper, so the Batmobile was able to crash through it with no effort. As the Batmobile went through the main doors, it came to a dead stop. More of the security guards come running in front of the Batmobile and began shooting at it, but nothing. There was no reaction. Then they see in the front bumper of the Batmobile 2 missiles that pop out. The guards freak and run off, and the Batmobile launches its missiles. Well, the missiles make impact, and the entire chemical factory goes up in a giant fireball. As the chemical plant was going up in flames, the Batmobile speeds out to safety. It finally escapes and comes to a dead stop at the front entrance of the chemical factory. But Batman was not inside driving it. He comes walking up to it. He was controlling it by remote. As he goes over to the driver's side to get inside, he sees a helicopter coming over him. The side door of the helicopter was open, and looking out of it was none other than the Joker, and he says on the bullhorn to Batman,
"Look up in the sky, Betsy. You miss me."
and the helicopter flies off. Later on that night, the Joker's parade was going on, as each parade float had a giant balloon of different things, and there was music blasting, namely an old Prince tune called Trust. And the Joker was there on the float like a king in his throne, and he grabs a bag full of money, starts throwing it. Everybody who was lying in the streets were frantic to get that money that he was throwing. He was not the only one throwing money. A lot of his men on the other floats were also throwing money to the crowds. As the parade was going on one of the back alleys facing out to the parade route, as the float was coming with the Joker on it, and the money was flying all over the place, Vicky Vale was there with her camera, and she was there with her friend, Jack Ryder. Jack Ryder says to Vicky, "Take a picture of this, Vicky. Gotham's greed." Vicky says to Jack Ryder, "You're right. Look at these greedy people, man. All for money." She starts snapping away with her camera. Meanwhile, in the skies in the outskirts of Gotham City. The Batjet was in a frantic rush to get to the Joker's parade before it was too late. While back at the parade, everybody was cheering and trying to grab the money that was flying off the floats. One man grabbed the money, and he looks at the money he grabbed and he noticed something odd about the money. That money was not real. He looked at it, it was a $1 bill, but instead of having George Washington's face on it, it had the Joker's face on it. And he's like, "What? This is not real money." Then the Joker says to Bob,
Alright, Bob, let's do this.
then the Joker hears a jet nearby flying. Seeing that, then the Joker says to Bob,
Winged Avenger stalks the night. Alright, Bob, come on, let's get this thing started.
Then the music stops playing, and the Joker grabs the microphone, and he says to the audience on the microphone,
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, who do you love? Hubba Hubba? Me? I'm giving away free money! Or do you love the Batman, who's probably home washing his tights?
The people in the crowd began screaming and shouting the Joker's name with cheers and excitement. Then the Joker lets out a big gleeful smile, and then he says on the mic,
Yes, yes, good people of Gotham, I love you all. But now comes the time that I relieve you, the little people, of your sad and burdensome existence.
As the Joker was delivering his final speech, Vicky Vale was still photographing the Joker on his float. Then she takes another photo of the giant balloon on his float, and she noticed something. She noticed the gleam of a metallic object in the streetlight that was on the belly of the giant balloon. She uses her camera lens and zooms in to see what it is. She sees it was 2 gas tanks and they were labeled poison. And then she lowers her camera and she realizes what was going on, and she says to Jack, "Jack, oh my god, Jack, he's gonna kill everybody!" Jack looks and he says to Vicky, "Get in the car quickly." The two get into Jack Ryder's car and lock the door, roll up the windows, and Jack Ryder closes all the air vents inside the car. Then the Joker, still laughing, grabs his orange and green gas mask and puts it on his face. He takes out a remote control and he presses the button. Well, as he put on his mask, it was a signal for his men around to put on their gas mask. As the Joker pressed the button, suddenly the giant balloons were filling up with Smilex gas, and the Smilex gas was coming out of the seams on the balloon. And soon the entire crowd was covered in Smilex as people began running and screaming and panicking, but they started all laughing as they were being exposed to Smilex, and they began to also fall down dead. Jack and Vicky looked in horror as people were trying to get into their cars in vain, but were falling down, dying, laughing maniacally in the process. But the process was going to be very short. As the Joker was doing that, suddenly Batman dives down with his Batjet and opens fire on the parade floats. With pinpoint accuracy, the bullets ripped the cables that had the giant gas-filled balloons tied down to the floats, and the floats quickly began floating at high speed into the skies above Gotham. Then Batman turns around in his Batjet, activates the missiles, and fires several missiles at the gas-spewing balloons. Joker looked with shock at what happened as he sees his balloons blowing up in the skies above Gotham City. He says angrily to Bob,
What the? Why didn't nobody tell me he had a jet with machine guns? Oh my god, oh my god. Bob the gun.
Bob hands Joker the gun, and Joker shoots Bob dead. And then he screams at his men that he needed a moment alone, and his men take out their guns and shoot rounds in the air to scare people away who were still collecting money despite that they were nearly gassed to death. Well, as the streets were quickly clearing, Batman was coming around to finish the job. The Joker goes to his float, opens a hidden compartment, and pulls out a giant rocket launcher and arms it, and he's pointing at the Batjet. As Batman was flying towards the Joker's float, he decides to take out the Joker once and for all. The Batman activates the targeting system, but something happens. It was a targeting error. The Batjet couldn't get a lock on the Joker. Batman looked, and the Joker shoots a missile right at the Batplane. Batman quickly moves the Batjet upwards, but the missile hits the back end of the jet, and there was a spectacular explosion. And everyone watched as the Batjet came crashing down at the front steps of the Gotham Cathedral. Vicky ran to the flaming wreckage of the Batjet. She looked around, but she didn't see any sign of Batman. Suddenly, she felt a gun to her head, and the Joker says to her,
Well, darling, I gotta get you to the church on time.
Then Joker gets on his radio, looks at the very top of Gotham Cathedral, and he lets out a smile to Vicky and says on the radio,
We're on transportation for 2, Gotham Cathedral. We'll be up there in 10 minutes.
The Joker signals Vicky to go ahead first, and he was right behind her with the gun. They go into the long-abandoned Gotham Cathedral. Shortly after they entered Gotham Cathedral, Batman glides down, landing gently. Batman ejected before the Batjet crashed, and now he was going in after the Joker to stop him. Well, the Joker and Vicky were going up the long rotting stairwell up to the belfry, and Batman was catching up quickly, but it's not easy running up a long flight of stairs. Well, as the Joker and Vicky make it to the top, the Joker uses his acid-spewing flower on his lapel, and he squirts acid on the old decaying ropes that were holding up the giant bells. As the acid ate away at the rope, the bell went crashing down. Of course, Batman had clung to the wall as the bell came crashing, but he was still able to climb up what remained of the stairs. But as the bell hit the bottom to the entrance of the stairwell that led up to the belfry, it blocked the way. The police came, they ran inside the old Gotham Cathedral, and they tried to run up to the belfry, but they found the entrance to the stairwell to go up to the belfry blocked by the giant bell. Batman finally made it up to the big belfry, and he hears the Joker saying,
What's this? I have a bat in my belfry. Boys, get rid of him.
Then the Joker's men that were up in the belfry were attacking Batman. One guy jumps from a higher level to try to ambush Batman, but Batman steps out the way. The guy lands and goes right through the rotted floorboards of the belfry, falling to his death. And another guy comes at Batman, but Batman beats the crap out of him. And another guy comes at Batman, but Batman beats the crap out of him. But there was one guy, a big mean guy, that actually posed a challenge to Batman. He was beating Batman like a rag doll, throwing him around. Batman landed 1 or 2 punches, but it was barely phasing him. While the struggle was going on, the Joker was forcing Vicky to dance with him in a waltz as Batman was getting pummeled. Well, the guy lands a haymaker on Batman, and it appears that Batman fell to his death as Batman fell back on one of the bells and fell down the hole. The goon looks down and sees nothing but darkness and a large drop. Suddenly, Batman's legs come flying up, kick the guy in the temple, and pull him towards the drop. As it was doing that, the bell that was coming back his direction hits him, landing on a loud gong, and the man falls to his death. Batman quickly climbs back up. As the Joker was dancing the waltz with Vicky, he says to Vicky,
You know what, Vicky? I feel like ending it all.
Then the Joker pulls out his gun, puts it to his head, and pulls the trigger. Vicky screams, but instead of a shot, it was one of those guns that said bang. And Joker lets out a laugh and throws the gun and keeps on dancing with Vicky. As they were dancing, Vicky notices Batman walking in the distance calmly. And then she begins to distract the Joker. She begins kissing the Joker and says, You know what, Joker? I think you're a very sexy man. That chalk white skin, those ruby red lips, the green hair. And she says, Oh God, the purple suit. I love purple. The Joker was confused. He didn't know what to make of it. But in the confusion, the Batman comes up to him and gives him a right hook, sending him flying back. And then the Batman lands a left hook, then a right hook, then a left hook. The Joker holds on to his mouth and then spits out his teeth, but instead of real teeth, it was one of those stupid chattering teeth and some real blood with it. And then the Joker says to Batman,
Hey, Batsy, old buddy, no hard feelings. I didn't mean to shoot down your probably expensive plane, but you're gonna kill me. Come on, Batsy, how silly can we get?
Then the Joker reaches in for his pocket, pulls out a pair of glasses and puts it on, and he says to Batman,
Come on, Batman, you won't hit a guy with glasses.
And Batman lands a heavy punch on the Joker. The Joker falls over the ledge. Batman and Vicky look over to see if the Joker really fell to his death. Suddenly, the Joker's hands grab Batman and Vicky's arms and pulls them right over the ledge. Now the Batman and the Vicky were hanging on to dear life as the Joker was dancing on the ledge. The ledge was also falling apart as he began stomping on it, and it was falling down. Batman was holding on to a gargoyle, and Vicky was just holding on to the ledge. And the Joker says,
They sure don't make 'em like they used to.
Then he looks at the giant ugly gargoyle and says to it,
What are you laughing at?
Then he offers Vicky a hand. As Vicky grabbed his hand, suddenly the hand popped right off. It was the old fake hand gag. She almost fell to her death, but Batman quickly grabbed her with his left hand and pulls her right up to the gargoyle that he was hanging on to. Vicky holds on for dear life as the Joker was laughing maniacally. Then they hear the helicopter coming. The helicopter was coming for the Joker. It drops a rope ladder, and the Joker says to Batman,
Well, I guess Batman's time to go, but if you're ever in town, feel free to drop in.
The Joker grabs on to the rope ladder as the helicopter began to ascend. Batman reaches in for his utility belt and pulls out a bolo launcher. And then he launches the bolo. The one end of the bolo wrapped around the Joker's ankle, and the other end of the bolo wrapped around the gargoyle. Now the Joker wasn't going anywhere. As the helicopter tried to ascend, they didn't want to risk killing the Joker, as the Joker was not letting go. And then the Joker looked as he was beginning to lose his grip. Suddenly, the Joker fell, but due to being tied to the gargoyle, he swings back and hits the wall with a hard thud. He was now out cold, hanging upside down. The helicopter flies away, and Batman and Vicky look at each other. Suddenly, the gargoyle they were hanging onto gives way, and they're about to fall to their death. But Batman quickly reached in for his utility belt, pulls out his grapple gun, and grapples onto the ledge of the cathedral roof. Now, Batman and Vicky stopped falling, but they were going to swing right into a stained glass window. Batman quickly twists around to protect Vicky as his body crashes through the stained glass window. Batman lets go of the grapple gun, and the two drop and hit with a hard thud onto the ground. Batman looks at Vicky and he asks her,
Are you okay?
Vicky says yes to Batman. Batman just looks at her with an expressionless face, and then he runs off to hide as the police come in. Well, the Joker was arrested, and all his remaining men were arrested. Gotham City was at peace again, but for how long? Like and subscribe. The end.